everyone, and welcome to the SoCal Summer Swing Out podcast. The music you are currently listening to is called Dances in the Night by Papa D, a fellow swing dancer, musician, artist, and friend. You can find all links for streaming, socials, and videos down below. Make sure to go and support him. Now let's get into the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SoCal Summer Swing Out podcast. My name is Andre, your host, and we have a lovely dear friend of mine. It is Albert He. What up, dude?
Hey, hello. Thank you, Andre, for inviting me to be on the show.
You're very welcome, man. Now, some of you might know Albert from his many travels, which is the point of today's podcast. Do you actually know how many events you've been to last year,
Last year?
or maybe even just this year? I'm curious.
This year? No, I actually haven't kept track. If I sat down and spent maybe like a few minutes, I could probably count up all the events that I have gone to. Somebody did ask me, because I'm about to turn 30 years old, in
Mhm.
February. Somebody was like, "Have you been to 30 events yet? Because maybe that could be a thing."
Hmm.
And after sitting there for a couple minutes, I was like, no, by the time February comes around, I will have hit well over 30 events.
Really?
And this is over in the time span of about 2 years or so. I started traveling for dance events about earlier 2022-ish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, strictly speaking, late 2021. But I mean, I have a reason why I think of early 2022. I can get into
Hmm.
that also.
Yeah. We can definitely talk about that because, in my opinion, you're uniquely qualified to talk about the different scenes and the different events. And some of your Facebook posts were talking about like aspects of events you liked and whatnot, because you've been to so many events.
I've been to
Right
a lot.
now, even. Yeah, right
Yeah,
now, even you're not in California, right?
yeah, that's right. I am currently in Texas. I just finished up Austin Lindy Exchange. That was this past weekend, and
Hmm.
currently I'm visiting a friend in Texas. It's kind of another perk when you're traveling to be able to meet up with friends. You know, some of them might have moved away after college, and some of them might have just moved away due to circumstances. And
Hmm.
great opportunity to just also travel and see people that you've known before.
That is a huge benefit. I will say this, speaking of like benefits, is seeing as you travel as much as you do, I'm sure people are burning to ask, like, how are you able to do that? How are you able to travel as much as you do?
Right. The answer to that is kind of simple. The straightforward details are that I am an engineer and I work remotely. And my work hours and my work schedule is fairly flexible.
Hmm.
So not entirely tied to some sort of 9 to 5 type thing. I can be in
Hmm.
different zones, and sure, there are some restrictions on where I can go, but for the most part, everything's pretty flexible. I have a pretty well paying job, and I have a flexible work schedule. And yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say about that.
Dude, that's actually like so eye-opening, because I think that a lot of people wonder, like, man, I want to travel more, but then how do I get there? So if anyone is thinking about that, like being an engineer, that could be that could be a route to go. I have a specific question though about like traveling for you, because you said you started in 2022. I was curious, like, did you decide that you were going to travel a lot, or how did that whole like I'm going to be traveling all the time come about?
All right, so it really didn't, strictly speaking, start in early 2022. Um, Really, it started in late 21. What
Hmm.
happened was Camp Hollywood got canceled again for the second year in a row. It
Hmm.
got in 20, obvious, and then it was canceled again in 21. But some other events were starting to make a comeback. So the first event that I actually traveled for Lindy Hop was Lindy on the Rocks. That's in
Oh, okay.
right, and it's in mid September. So A friend of mine, Cami Asher, I was living in San Diego at the time, and Cami was also living in San Diego. She told me, "Hey, you want to go to Denver? Because we were going to go to Camp Hollywood, but then that got canceled. So Lindy on the Rocks is happening though. So you want to go to Denver with us?" I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure." And did that. And so booked my flight, went on the plane, arrived over there, and danced in Denver for the first time. And it was my first time traveling a fair distance for a dance event.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to the pandemic, I didn't really travel all that much.
Mm-hmm.
I was based in San Diego, and literally the only events that I had ever gone to before the pandemic was Camp Hollywood in 2019, San
Mm-hmm.
Diego Lindy Exchange, which happened in the summer of 2019, and also this there was this Balboa event in Las Vegas. I forgot the name of it. It escapes me right now, but that was basically that was one out of state event that I went to. And then there was also this New Year's event in Santa Barbara called Santa Swing at the end of
Mm-hmm.
20, and there were some good people that went there also. So those were like the handful of events that I had ever been to, and it was also I didn't really travel before that during
Mm-hmm.
that time before the pandemic because I was still relatively speaking new to dancing. I only started dancing in late 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was only about a year and a half of dancing experience before the pandemic hit. And after the pandemic kind of lifted a little bit, I started thinking, oh, okay, well, I can go to Lindy on the Rocks with Cami and other California people. And that was my first experience going out and doing the things. And then I kind of got hooked to the idea of just traveling because I was at a point where I felt like I could grow from having these experiences traveling to states further away than just Nevada, and seeing what the world had, seeing what the rest of the United States had for me for my dancing.
Dude, that's really cool that you started at like local events and then when Cami brought you into the fold, now you just travel all the time. Uh, which like I wonder, what do you think is like some of the biggest differences between events? Because you've been to a lot. You probably see like the good things that events do or the common themes. What are some of those things that you notice, some jarring things that were like right there in front of you?
Hmm. So I personally don't think I'm a very particular person with how events are done. I am, by and large, the end consumer for these events. And as a result, I have my own personal experiences as a result of that position. There are
Hmm.
people who have gone to events that are like organizers or who have worked on the event planning side of things, and they would notice a lot of details about how events are run.
Hmm.
But I don't have any of that experience, and all I can really comment on is just whatever I could see and whatever was brought to the public stage, basically. So that's the perspective that I have, and I just want to
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
not caution, but just like the disclaimer is that I
Sure.
just have experience purely as a dancer, and I feel like a lot of your viewers would also appreciate that too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so
So
give us your thoughts on that then.
yeah, there's lots of different kinds of events, and they you can kind of group them into several categories. You can have like workshop weekends, you can have exchanges, and you can I think those are it, because for the most part they either have workshops, they either just have classes and stuff, or
Hmm.
they're just focused on dancing and music. They can also have different sizes too. They're like really big events, and then there are like smaller events. For example, Lindy Fest in Houston is a rather large event, and I went to Lindy Fest this past year. It was in March, and there were
Hmm.
like several hundred people there, and it
Hmm.
was almost overwhelming, especially because I'd never been to Houston before. didn't really have an idea what it would be like.
Hmm.
And there definitely was a lot happening. There are like 6 different tracks for classes, and there are lots of elective classes that you could do. They had a Big Apple workshop that they taught in just 2 hours. I was kind of surprised that you could teach the Big Apple in 2 hours because it definitely takes a lot more than 2 hours to just be able to
Yeah.
ingrain
Yeah.
your first place. Then there's also like smaller events. Like there's this one in Cincinnati in earlier August, I think. It's called
Hmm.
Cincy, and that was it was an exchange. They did have a competition. I think it was kind of informal, but it was still cute, and it was still great to see some people throw down on the floor. That event didn't have more than 200 people. Maybe it was like 150, maybe even 120 or so.
Hmm.
And it was a lot less overwhelming. It was much more intimate. I was actually able to dance with almost every follow over there. I'm primarily,
Nice.
I don't usually follow. Sometimes I do though. So I would comment that at those smaller events, you feel like it feels like more possible that you'll be able to dance with everybody, and then you won't feel like you're missing out on stuff. And also exchanges like that, they tried to show off the city also. So it wasn't just dancing at some historic venue or some pretty looking place. We also got to dance in the city center. There was like
Hmm.
this nearby, and we got to see some of the sights. And that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think that that's really, really cool that you went to Cincinnati because that used to be like my backyard. Because I was in Indiana and I would dance. I had a best friend who lived in Cincinnati. So the Ohio people are great people. They're really fun, huh?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too. When I went there and told them I was from Los Angeles, some of them asked about you, and then I asked you about some of those people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, there's a Sarah Sertle over there in
Hmm.
Indianapolis," and
Yeah.
I sent pictures between to you and also to her, and it was just it's a fun way to connect with people too. You never know who your mutual friends are, you know.
Yeah, and I I do have to say, like, some people dog on the Midwest, but the Midwest is a phenomenal place to dance. Like, that's where I learned, and the people there are so kind and so welcoming, in my opinion. Which brings me to my question of like going to these different events. Have you found certain areas to be like very community oriented and super welcoming than others?
Yeah, for sure. Um, I would comment the general trend is the smaller the scene is, the
Mm,
more intimate the experience is when you're dancing with them, because it becomes more close knit, it becomes tighter
yeah.
knit. It's easier to connect with everybody. When you
Hmm.
start going to scenes that are particularly large, and it becomes mentally taxing or emotionally taxing to meet everybody who's there, then that's
Hmm.
where I feel there might be a little more of a disconnect. That's
Hmm.
not to say that you still can't get a feeling of warmth or sincerity or anything like that from these larger communities. It's just that they kind of get broken up into smaller groups or smaller circles.
Yeah. Yeah. And like to the people that are listening, like I know this kind of sounds kind of cliquish and whatnot, but to put it into perspective, these bigger scenes have been around for a while and these people have known each other for like a decade. And so maybe this is the only chance to get to see each other as friends. So it's less of like, oh, us versus them. It's just they're there to hang out with their friends on that day. But to your point, I want to hear your thoughts on the Denver scene because Denver is by far one of the most welcoming scenes I've ever danced in. Um, but I haven't been to Philly yet, and I really want to go. So give me your thoughts on Denver.
I love Denver. Uh,
Yeah.
I was just in Denver. So last
Yeah.
week was Lindy on the Rocks. I mentioned that
Mm.
Lindy Rocks is a mid-September event. It's usually 2 weeks after Camp Hollywood or something like that. Excuse me. Denver, I would comment, is about a medium-sized scene. After going to Lindy on the Rocks, I stayed around for a few more days, and then I went to their weekly dance. So on
Mm-hmm.
Tuesdays at this place called the Merc, short for the Mercury Cafe.
Mm-hmm.
And the weekly there probably had maybe it's not more than 100 people, but that space can't really fit all that many people anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked somebody there, hey, so are the numbers here kind of consistent for what a regular weekly dance here looks like? And they're like, no. Some people probably have skipped this week's weekly because of Lindy on the Rocks
Mm-hmm.
uh, presence in the weekend prior. Um, so there's some feeling to be had about what the size of the scene is, and then the next question is, well, what about the people there, and how's it? How do you like the dancing there? And all the things that you're really asking me about, and I love it because there are some phenomenal people there, and there's also some incredible talents there. Also, some people are up and coming. For example, there's this guy Clay Busenich. He's
Mm-hmm.
actually from Colorado Springs, but he drives up to Denver very often just to dance there. And he's been dancing, I think, 2 years or so, and he partook in the amateur level of a mix and match, and he won first place.
Nice.
And yeah, so there's some quality people up and coming there, and they're all friendly people, great to hang out with. I actually had ramen with Clay during the weekend too. He asked me for my advice about like traveling and all those things because he also knows that
Mm-hmm.
I travel, and
Mm-hmm.
he's also been doing a little bit of traveling himself too. He's actually asked me for advice on Beantown, for example, which is all the way over in
Mm-hmm.
the east, near Boston. Then there's also other people like Stephanie Kwan, who you've actually competed with,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, you actually matched with her at the Camp Hollywood mix and match, right?
Yeah, Colorado crowd went crazy wild. They were so loud. It was amazing.
Yeah, there's there's nothing bad that I can say about the Denver crowd, really. Also, Laura Keats over there too, so
Yeah.
definitely solid base for dancing.
I was gonna because I have a heart for Denver as well because of Steph and my sister lives there and stuff. But I was curious, like, what do you think makes them so welcoming? What is it that makes them like apart from like the whole like it's a medium-sized scene and whatnot, like what do you think really like brings people in from your perspective?
Hmm. So I think there's a level of authenticity that they have.
Mm,
Uh, by authenticity, I suppose I mean that their intentions are like straightforward and pure and genuine, stuff like that,
mm-hmm,
and they have their hearts set in the right place, right?
mm,
It's not a small scene. It's not the largest scene either. It really is kind of a medium-sized scene. But they have their community mindsets in the right place, I think, because they don't just talk about Denver. They also talk about stuff that's happening in Boulder. They talk about other events that's happening around the area. They actually spent like a legit 20 minutes or so, maybe 15 to 20 minutes doing announcements during the
mm-hmm,
weekly.
mm-hmm,
That's actually not something that I've seen at the weekly dances in many other places. I know at Atomic we do have our round of announcements, but they're pretty short. It's like maybe 5 minutes or so. But there's a lot
mm-hmm.
around Denver, and they try to announce that to everybody. And I think that's probably at least part of the reason why it feels nice being there because they have a good community mindset.
So like the community mindset, the authenticity, and the people and cross promoting events. It sounds like they're very community oriented and they just promote everyone and it gives it a sense of unity. Would you say that's accurate?
I think that's right. I would also probably add, the lack of ego in that scene.
Mm.
Another important quality to that makes me feel welcome there.
I think that's a good point to touch on because I know that they have like high caliber professional instructors there. And when I see Laura Keat interacting with all the other students or the people that she's teaching, it's kind of they're all just friends. They're homies. Like they bring the Colorado flag and they were like waving that at Camp Hollywood. You could tell that they were a group and they were together. They were united, and that I envy that so much, and I really appreciate that a lot for the Denver scene.
Yeah.
Do you think in all your travels is there a scene second to Denver that you would say is kind of close to that?
I mean, you're putting me on the spot. There's a lot of scenes that I know.
I know, I know. I know the Denver people are gonna listen to this. They're gonna be like, "Yeah." Thinking about you, Christina.
All right. I actually did write out a list of all the scenes that I have gone to, so I could probably look at that list real quick.
Yeah,
See some mind.
because
Uh,
you've been to Seattle. You and I were roommates at Focus. You were
yeah,
in North Carolina for um, flying home.
yeah. You know, Denver really does stick out. I'm looking at my list here, and man, the only other scene that I can think of that just felt really nice to me um, is oh man. Okay, now I'm gonna talk about two of them. So
Okay.
there's an even smaller scene in Cincinnati, right? But
Mm-hmm.
when I was there for Cincy Hop, I just loved the feel of their event.
Mm-hmm.
All the people there were just so nice, and even there were out of towners there also. There were some that came all the way from Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there are some that came all the way from Texas also. But it was just so warm, and it was like actually it was very warm over there. It was very humid,
Mm-hmm.
as it gets in early August in Cincinnati. But I think I really liked their scene. I really liked how friendly everybody felt over there. The other place that I would mention is in Oregon. There is this town called Eugene, and then there's
Oh.
other town called Corvallis. And in the year last year, when I went to Northwest Balfest in Seattle, I met this gal over there. Her name is Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
And we were doing Balboa because it's Northwest Belfast, but at some point I saw her doing a little bit of shag, and I was like, oh, she does shag, and so it's like, hey, let's do some shag, and then we did a little bit of shag, and then it was great, and we did some Balboa also, and it was great, and then I walked away from that event thinking, oh man, what a nice, lovely event to do Balboa and
Mm.
shag. Shag is my favorite. Balboa comes a close second, and then Lindy is by and far kind of third place. If me, then you know that that's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
I met Bailey again in actually no, it wasn't just Northwest Belfast. Before that, it was Camp Jitterbug. That was also in Seattle. I met Bailey
Mm-hmm.
there. I did shag with her, and then I met her again in Northwest Belfast, and I didn't recognize her, and she was like, "You remember me, right?" I was like, "No, sorry, I'm sorry." And she was like, and then I saw her again at Camp Hollywood, and I remembered her this time, and then I told her, "Hey, by the way, I'm going to Eugene for a Tracktown Throwdown." And she was just elated. And then I also got to meet a lot of the Oregon peeps in Eugene. Eugene is, I think, the second largest city in Oregon out after Portland. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was doing a little weird flashy light thing. Um, and when I went to Eugene and I did Tracktown Throwdown, Anthony Chen and Irina Amzashvili were teaching there. I got to meet a lot of the Eugene folks and the Corvallis folks, and it was another small event, but it was just so warm and welcoming, and I loved meeting all the people there. I got to meet Nika
Mm.
Jin, probably it's one of the big names from coming from that region. She's a great solo jazz dancer, and she's a phenomenal dancer overall. Um, I got to meet all those people there, and it just felt nice. I don't know what to say, man. It's
No, 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 no. I think you're hitting the nail on the head, and I sense a theme with all these places that you're talking about. The theme is that you meet quality people, like high quality, good people. Not good like yeah, they're great dancers and stuff, but like as a person, they are good people, and they connected you with other people, and then that's how when you go to a scene, you feel like really welcoming. For
yeah.
example, yeah, you mentioned Steph, she's an amazing connector and like connects with everyone. She makes anyone feel welcome. Sarah Sturtle, she's a very dear friend of mine that I've known for over a decade. And then it sounds like this Bailey person is pretty
Yep.
cool as well. So yeah, you'd say like the people definitely make or break like how welcoming a scene or an event is. Yeah.
I absolutely agree. I think the people that you meet along the way, they definitely contribute a lot to your experience. It's not just with dancing, it could be your job, it could be your classroom, your classmates. If you have people around you who aren't contributing to your experience and really just being a detriment, if they're being mean or if they're being dumb about their interactions, that can definitely put a damper on things. And
Hmm.
you really have to have quality people around to make the experience feel good.
Mm. Yeah, dude, I hear you on that. I remember the first time I moved to SoCal, and I was really nervous because it's Atomic Ballroom, the Atomic Ballroom. Now I'm like, oh yeah, this is home. But I remember walking in and be like, damn, this is the place. And one of the first people I danced with, you know her, Erin, runner, Erin.
Yeah, Aaron.
Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. So she was like the first person I asked to dance because she seemed like a kind person, you know. And I asked Amy Merwin to dance too, and those two were like the first two people I ever asked to dance. I'm so glad too because damn, it was just it was a nice it was a nice introduction into the atomic scene. Although I kind of have this idea someday where I'm gonna put on like a bunch of prosthetic makeup and stuff, and then not, and then be completely unrecognizable. Go to Atomic and just see how it feels just to be like a brand new person at Atomic again or at another scene. I've had like an idea to do that at some point, but just a thought for any of the listeners or anyone if you see someone who's my height walking into your dance with a big beard. Um,
You could shave the beard.
that I could that I could. Uh, so since we're
I,
talking about
I do want to comment on that because I do relate
yeah,
to that. I relate to that experience of like going to a new place and not knowing anybody and just trying to be a completely new dancer because you've been dancing a fairly long time. I think it was well over 10 years at this point,
I think so.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't really been dancing that long. I'm actually coming up on my 5 year mark, but
Mm.
I've been dancing in SoCal almost the entire time. And I thought to myself, I wonder how I would fare or, how it would be like to go to a completely new place and dance at this place and not have anybody know me. I wonder what that experience would be like. And,
Mhm.
that's something that I do want to talk about because there are some considerations to take into account when you do travel. And this is something I do want to bring up also for early 22 when I first
Mm.
started traveling solo to my dance events. When
Mhm.
I mentioned traveling to Lenny on the Rocks in late 21, that was kind of the start of my whole travel to other places to dance kind of journey, but that was with people that I knew. So
Mhm.
I had a home base to stick to. I kind of had a circle that I could stick to in case I felt like weird or whatever. Same thing
Mhm.
for Hot Rhythm Holiday in 22. I went with people that I knew that were going to be there. There's a lot of people from California that would go to Hot Rhythm Holiday, but it wasn't until late March, early April or so. That's when I went to Hard Knocks in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I
Mm.
got to see what it was like to dance in a completely different place, not know anybody, or just know very, very few people, and just go on that sort of independent journey. So
Yeah,
I don't know if you want to take this conversation now because it sounded like you had another point you wanted to bring up.
no, I think that what you're saying is so true though, because there are people listening to this podcast who do travel, and maybe they don't have that foundation, that friend group or that base of people that they can go. An example is like in between classes or after the class or before the dance, going to eat. I know that there are some people who go to events and they travel solo and they don't have their group with them, so they go eat by themselves. But one of the things that makes events so like rewarding and well and like memorable is when you spend time with other people. So I guess this is kind of like um PSA, I guess you could say, right? Is like if you see someone who's at an event and they may be like by themselves or new, I think it's a great idea to be like, hey, you getting food? You want to come get food with us? You know, because that could add to their experience as a either a new dancer or someone who's traveling to your scene for the first time.
Hmm.
So we are talking about how like people travel to a new place by themselves, and sometimes you can travel with other people, and how the logistics of that work. Because you and I have been roommates before at some events. So talk to me about your thoughts on traveling with other people and like knowing yourself and all of that.
Right. So knowing yourself uh, goes a long way in how you'll get your experience at a particular event. Um, for example, my personality when it comes to traveling, I tend to mesh well with most people, but I do have a few ways that I go about traveling that's just me, basically. Like, for
Mm-hmm.
example, to touch upon the whole, how am I able to travel to so many events? Well, let me tell you, I like to look and book well in advance of the event, make sure that I can find cheap flights and
Mm-hmm.
make use of public transportation. So I'm not, using Uber and Lyft to get everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't say that I definitely don't live a cheap lifestyle, but I try to be frugal where I can be, so that I can have some sort of self-preservation when it comes to traveling so much. That's one of the ways that I've been able to travel so much because I don't flagrantly spend all my money. That's one thing that's come to mind. Another thing, well, I guess another thing in addition to that, tangential to that, is there's gonna be expenses when you travel. Like there's food expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Eating out all the time? Does your place have a kitchen where maybe you can do a little bit of cooking? Or can you go to a grocery store and just stock up on supplies like Gatorade or granola bars or even fruits? Because yeah, those are important things to consider. Um, and if you're eating out a lot, maybe you're eating out with friends, and maybe your friends might be in a better financial situation, or they might just want to be eating out all the time. And then you have to make a decision for yourself. Do you want to be eating out all the time? Would you
Mm-hmm.
rather at home? And then speaking of friends that you're traveling with, speaking of people that you're around, do you mesh well with them when you're spending a lot of time with them? Because when
Mm-hmm.
you go to a weekly dance, you only see them there for like a few hours that you're there. But when you're traveling together, when you're rooming with them, it's kind of a different story. You have to actually ask yourself, can you room well with these people? Because it's not just a few hours now, it's going to be 48, 72 hours I'm going to be with them. Do
Mm-hmm.
you like to have peace and quiet when it's sleeping time, or do you also like to party and down or pregame or postgame, stuff like that? So these are all very important considerations, and I, like I said, I mesh well with most people. So Andre, you shouldn't feel guilty that you love to throw parties when I room with you. I want in that I always feel guilty for anybody who rooms with me because I snore loud. And Andre, you've heard my snoring. But also, luckily,
Yeah,
you're and you also snore too. And I'm okay with that because
yeah.
I can work around other people snoring and stuff like that.
No. You and I are on the same page. That's why it works so well. If I'm ever traveling to an event, I think, oh, is Bert going? If it's a hotel event, well, then I already know who I'm going to ask to room with me, right? Because it works out so well. Plus, I have to say, you have been so kind with all the parties that I have thrown, and that is very very kind of you to do so. Because what we did, it was Lindy on the Rocks. We did Lindy Focus, and then there was like two others where I think we had parties. But just so everybody knows, I don't throw wild parties all the time at every single event. That is that is not true. But Bert's been to enough of my parties where, I'm respectful, and I make sure to take care of stuff at the end of the day. For example, this past Camp Hollywood, I was wild. I was probably the wildest one yet. But I want to touch on like what you said about traveling with other people because it is very true. When you travel with other people, it makes or breaks your weekend because the way people do logistics and the way they make decisions impacts you because no longer just you by yourself, it's who you're around. And so it's nice when you travel with um with people because then you know how they work. For example, I already know that with you, you like to take your time when you shower in the morning. And so for me, I know that, all right, let me just jump in, shower quick, and then give Bert his uh, 45-minute shower time, you know? And so that kind of stuff, that kind of synergy is important if anyone's thinking about traveling, like just knowing who you're traveling with. And if you're traveling by yourself, or with other people, or yeah, if you're traveling by yourself and you're rooming with a random person, that could also work out well. What have you found to be like the most enjoyable thing about traveling solo?
Traveling solo is nice because I get to make my own plans and I don't
Mm,
feel attached to anybody. I have the freedom and flexibility to decide my time. That's something that's actually incredibly important to me. My time is important to me, and how I choose to spend it is important to me.
mm,
If I am traveling with, if I am rooming with people and I feel obliged to be with them the entire time, trying to make plans with people sometimes can be a headache, sometimes not, but oftentimes the more people that are involved, it becomes kind of like an n squared problem because there's just
mm-hmm,
so you have to check with what time are you available? Maybe you're in different tracks. Maybe you have food restrictions that you have to be wary of, or food preferences and stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I think that answers your question, right? Traveling solo, it's having that freedom to choose how I want to spend my time. Now, granted, some people don't know how to spend their time. Some
Mm,
people know what they want to do, and some people rely on having that group dynamic to kind of decide those choices for them.
mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes that can be fun too, trying just going with the flow. But at the end of the day, you are still, for better or worse, you're stuck with yourself. So at least having a base plan of what to do in case you are alone, I feel is important.
Yeah, I agree because I don't think that I've traveled completely solo yet. I went to ILHC 2021 when it was in Washington, D.C. And that was, I think, one of the few times where I'd actually traveled by myself. But that's when I like injured my ankle on Friday night and couldn't dance the rest of the weekend. So that wasn't a great experience. But this coming month in October, I'm traveling a lot solo too. So I was asking mainly for like me. But I was curious on that front. Like, what is this is going to go towards like the question that we have at the end, but what's your advice to anyone who will be starting to travel solo?
Hmm. Have a base plan. Like, have an idea of how you're getting to all the places that you're going to go to. Try to map out and schedule like where you want to be, whenever and wherever that is.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you do have to make some sacrifices. Maybe you do have to take a Lyft, an Uber. Maybe you can reach out to people and ask them for some support if you need a ride to a place.
Mm,
Uh, it's I feel like having that sort of baseline plan is essential
yeah.
because anything else on top of that, any support you can receive along the way is a bonus. And any friends you meet along the way and plans that you make with them, if things do work out, then that's just also a bonus.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Having that sort of baseline plan is important, but it's not an easy process because it does require you to know things about yourself. It does require you to be open to change and
Hmm.
accept. You also have to accept that there can be mistakes along the way because maybe some logistics part didn't work out, or maybe some things didn't pan out the way that you had hoped. But it's just going to be a process, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. It's like any muscle that you're working out.
Hmm.
Um, and I encourage people to at least do a little bit of traveling and try to travel independently at least a couple of times so that you can learn um, for yourself what kind of person you are when you go traveling. Because I learned a lot about myself when I first started traveling solo. Like I mentioned, the event in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Hmm.
I learned that in addition to what kind of dances I like to do and what kind of music I like to listen to when I go dancing, I learned that I am a person that likes to adhere to a schedule, likes to have a plan going forward, and I like to not dilly dally so much and waste a lot of time sitting around. I ended up finding other people that were like minded, and I actually jived very well with them.
Hmm.
That sort of thing.
Yeah, no, that's solid advice. I mean, I think that ties into some of the stuff you mentioned before of knowing yourself, knowing whether you're someone who's planned and scheduled, or if you're someone that's like, oh yeah, I'll just do whatever, right? And then being able to, if you're traveling with a group, especially, being able to be fluid without all of that, because the San Diego crowd tends to be like kind of both, sort of, and we all kind of just move and meld as needed, which I think is important when traveling together. That being said, before we go into the wrap up stages, is there anything else that you want to expand on that we talked about already, or anything new that you wanted to bring up?
Mm, I think we covered all the parts that I really wanted to talk about. Um, just yeah, no, I think I guess I just want to reiterate that when you travel, you learn more about yourself, and then you also just meet all these wonderful people along the way.
Mm.
Get to hold hands with all of them. It's nice. You never know what kind of people you'll meet along the way unless you go out there and you meet them. And then once you've done enough traveling, you become recognized. A
Mm.
lot of people
Yeah.
recognize. Um,
Yeah, dude.
Maybe I guess this also just ties into like knowing yourself. But one thing that I want to personally mention about my dance experience, my journey when I was traveling, is that I try to stick to things that made me unique. Um,
Mm.
for my bits, I knew I had the self confidence to recognize that even when I'm traveling to a place that I'd never been to before, I had some qualities about me that were unique. For example, the type of Lindy hop that I do is LA style Lindy, which typically
Hmm.
involves counterbalance and has a different look and feel. It's not that I can't do the other styles of Lindy hop, the Savoy style, for example, but it is something that makes me stick out a little bit. Also,
Hmm.
I pride myself on loving shag. There are a lot of people that love shag, and you'll meet a lot of you will also meet people who think the same way, depending on what you think your unique qualities are, and then you'll jive with them. Like I've met a
Hmm.
lot of do shag, and they're just like great people, and they are important people to me. And when I go to a dance event, I can always look forward to, or in a particular area, like in the Pacific Northwest, for example, I know to look for Bailey, and I know that I can find always have a good shag dance with her.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it helped me feel a little less insecure about myself when I went out to dance because I'm not the best dancer, but I also know that I'm not the worst dancer. And even then, I have other qualities that I can bring to the dance that make me stand out, make me feel unique, make me more secure about my presence in a
Mm-hmm.
dance. And that's gone a long way for me. I think
Yeah.
that's
It's a big growth experience, I think, traveling, and it's a very rewarding experience, like you said too, because you get to meet a lot of fantastic people. So,
it's incredibly validating too, all
mm,
the about yourself, but also when you can also have experiences that make you think differently. Maybe you wanted to go and do a competition because you thought you're ready for it. And then you go out there and then you kind of trip on the way and you don't have a good showing. And that's okay. That's all part of the growth experience.
mm-hmm.
You like, we'll make some mistakes along the way too. And it's all a part of growing.
100%, 100%. Yeah, that growth piece, I think, is something that people can very much relate to. That being said, let's go into our last three questions of the podcast. So, the first question is very on topic here. It's where are you traveling to the rest of the year? We only have 3 months. I'm curious. Where are you going?
So currently, I am on this 6 week trip. I have lined up 6 consecutive dance weekends. Started by going to Denver for Lindy on the Rocks. Now I am
Hmm.
in Texas. I was just at Austin Lindy Exchange, and now I'm visiting a friend. My next stop is Chicago for Great Lakes Balboa Escape. After that, I go to New York Lindy Exchange, New York City. Then I'm going to my first international event, Barcelona Shag Festival. Then
Ooh.
I fly back to the States, and then I'm gonna make this little stop over in Richmond, Virginia for I Heart Bow. I'm really looking forward to that one because it's an exchange. I love exchanges. And it's
Mm,
Balboa. I also love Balboa. And then after that, at some point, I figure out how to get home. Haven't exactly booked my return flight yet. I'm gonna
mm,
figure that. As for the rest of this year, there's a couple of events in November that I'm going to. There's one called For Fall's Sake in, I believe it's Durham, North Carolina. And then the
mm.
week after that is Hot Jazz Jamboree in Denver again. So I'm going to be visiting Denver very often. Then there's Snowball at the end of the year. The New Year's event that I'm going to is Snowball. It'll be my first time going to Snowball. It'll be my second international event.
Damn, dude. I'm gonna see you in Chicago.
Oh, sick! You're going to Great Lakes?
Yeah, yeah. My best friend.
Oh, boy! Nice.
Yeah, dude. I'm sinking my teeth in some Balboa this year. That is one of my goals.
Very good.
All right, dope. Now the other question is, if people wanted to like follow your travel journeys or whatnot, where could they see that?
Uh, For the most part, I've been doing this thing where every airport I go through, I will do a Facebook post.
Mm,
Uh, it's almost borderline obnoxious how many posts I have made just talking about all the airports that I go through. But I usually detail which event I'm going to, and I also have closing thoughts on the events that I was just at when I'm flying
mm-hmm,
to my next destination or when I'm flying back. I also post on my Instagram a little bit, but my Instagram tends to be more varied in content. Recently, I've been getting into this thing called aerial silks. It's a circus art.
mm-hmm,
And I've been focusing a lot of my Instagram attention on that because it's the next challenging, cool thing for me to work on.
mm-hmm.
I'm always of the opinion to be working on something. Um, so my Instagram is where you would see that sort of content. But I do post dance content every now and then. Most often when I go into a jam circle because the band is throwing down and people are throwing down, I will try to post some a clip of me doing shag in there if I get a chance to get in there.
Nice. Nice. All right. Dope. And then the last question that I ask all of my guests is, what is a message you want to leave to any swing dancers that are listening?
You did warn me about this one. I want to say, don't be afraid to make mistakes when you go about doing your thing, right? It doesn't have to be dance, it can be literally anything that you're doing. If you are afraid to make mistakes, you never grow past a certain point. You never get out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I say life is an adventure. So, get out there. Go do it. Go do the things.
Get out there and go do the things.
Yes.
Love it, dude. That actually is on brand for you. Seeing how much you travel.
Yes.
Well, in terms of all the links that, all the things that Bert was talking about, I'll put all of those down in the description below. Things like Denver Scene, Cincy LX, all that kind of stuff. It'll be down there as well as his Facebook and whatnot. But Bert, thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Sure thing, man. I will see you in Chicago. Everyone else, don't forget to rate us 5 stars, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Instagram. Do all the things. And yeah, thank you all so much. And Bert, don't go anywhere after I stop recording. But everyone else, have a good one. Bye.
So, one last thing I also wanted to bring up for all of y'all listening. You're great.
Nice. Nice. Thank you for listening. The music you are currently hearing is called Dances in the Night by Papa D. You can find all its links down below. Till next time.
Don't lose hope, trying to stand tall, trying to give this dance of yours the best that you got, cause every time that they hear this sound, that music gets their feet above the ground. Time just seems to stop in every move. Seems all your life what is based on tonight, and all you gotta do is do it right. You gotta move, you gotta move, you gotta move, move, move. Got to be a